Alright, this is where the stealth game gets deadly serious. The Air Force just doubled down on its ultimate phantom, the B-21 Raider. There's brand new imagery of the second B-21 rolling into Edwards. Just check out this first one with the intakes. I'm going to be focusing on all these photos, so stay to the end of the video to get my full fighter pilot breakdown on all these new images and what this means. Having this second B-21 Raider, you would think that it would double the combat capability, but I'm going to tell you why it's going to 10x the combat capability. And if these things were needed, could they actually roll into combat sooner than expected? I'll give you my full fighter pilot breakdown on that. Check out these inlets on this image of this second B-21. This is pure wizardry. This is like alien tech. This is like red light therapy for bombers. Literally, alien technology is creating the way that these intakes flow into each other. Could it actually be alien technology? That's for you to decide. But today I'm breaking down these images and we'll talk about each one specifically and what it means for power projection and the B-21 moving forward. This is the biggest breakthrough that the B-21 has had since its creation. So lock in, we're gonna dive into what this means for the B-21 moving forward. So these photos that just dropped, they hit like a precision strike within themselves. It was like the B-21 photos are a JDAM smashing into a target. These things are so awesome. But the Air Force dropped them showing the two Raiders at Edwards now, and they're ready to hunt, at least for testing, and who knows, ready to hunt for combat in the near future. The new one landed on September 11th of 2025, and it showed up clean, no serial numbers, no base codes, no squadron tags, but I'm guessing that they're gonna probably eventually put something on the nose gear door, just like they put Cerberus on the first one. So I say they go with something with a 300 Spartan theme. Think of like a Greek helmet, wings flared out, spears ready to roll, Leonidas himself getting ready to crush the barbarian hordes, because the Spartans were built to crash the party of those barbarians. And speaking of crashing parties, this new B-21 is built to slip in behind enemy lines just like in Wedding Crashers.
Oh, that's my Lynn's adopted son.
But instead of parties, it's owning enemy airspace while the enemy's just sitting there blind. The first Raiders got that Cerberus, so that three-headed mythical beast, plus a bird silhouette nodding to Northrop's roots. And then again, the inlet views of that second beast, it just looks a little bit freaky. These could have been adapted slightly from the first one, but likely it's going to be pretty much exactly the same as far as the airframe and the inlets go. And it looks like there is a central massive weapons bay, so not a whole bunch of different weapons bays, but just one central massive one, not the extra stuff that might go on some of the other bombers. So all that firepower is likely in the main hold from what I can tell from that photo. But what's going down at Edwards? So the 420th Flight Test Squadron's running the combined test force, and with two birds now, they're pushing past basic flight tests into deep end mission system tests, weapons integration, and dual weapons integration, having two Raiders tag team targets now. This is a whole new definition when it comes to the strength of this bomber force. The dual Raiders let them simulate real squadron flow, so ground crews handling multiple jets, testing, tools, data, and logistics. This is essentially the beginning stages of where the prototypes become the predators. This is when the men are separated from the boys. This is when it really starts to go down. And then in addition to these two flying airframes, my assumption is there's probably some non-flying airframes that are going through ground tests at Plant 42 in California. Northrop's locked in low rate production deals, so they're probably spinning these out and getting them ready. And they're using the ones that aren't quite flight ready to do ground testing, to test the different systems, to test the integrated defense mechanisms that are inside these B-21s. And then the Air Force Chief of Staff David Alvin added in that the addition of the second B-21 to the flight test program accelerates the ability of this thing to be fielded into combat. That wasn't his exact words, but I'm paraphrasing there. He's basically saying by testing this thing more thoroughly and maybe more focused on a weapons or a hostile environment testing scenario, this thing's going to get into combat faster. So to me, it looks like they're really ramping up production, and I would expect them to get these things into combat sooner than we all expect. Some of the rumors have said as soon as 2026, maybe 2027. I would assume 2026, these would be ready for combat. Whether or not they go in 2026, that's a different conversation, but I think they will be ready a lot sooner than we all think. because they don't need to have dozens or 20, 30, 40 of these things. The ultimate order is supposed to be 100, but they don't need to have that many since now they're doing the dual testing, and likely, in my opinion, these things would go into combat in a twin configuration. So having 2 of them, you have to have at least 2 though, in case something goes wrong with one of the engines or one of the systems, one of the weapons delivery systems. You have to be able to have one of them turn around for a worst case scenario. Could be something as simple as the air refueling door not working. You have to have a backup. So sending this thing into combat, you're not going to send just one in alone and unafraid. You're going to send them in pairs, maybe in a triple formation or a quadruple formation. That's just kind of fun to say, triple and quadruple formation. But I would say the likely lethal dose of the B-21 will be a twin combat configuration formation. And that's kind of backed up from what I could find online. Fiscal year 2026 kicks off major builds at bases like Ellsworth, South Dakota. That's going to be the first base to go live with the B-21. They're upgrading all their hangars, their sims, everything up there is spooling up. The target operation, again, could be as late as 2029, but if I was a betting man, that's when we'll probably have closer to that 50 to 100. 100 is the total number that they want in the fleet, but I would assume that some of the structures and systems would be in place by next year to actually get this fleet up and flying, and even flying into combat if needed. But let's tear deeper into the tech. So this is why the Raider's untouchable. So let's start with the inlets. The stealth engineering of these inlets is the peak of inlet engineering that I've seen in any aircraft. Some of the Chinese jets, even the B-2, this B-21 is an incredible upgrade on top of that. You can see that the way that this thing flows, it feeds the engines without lighting up any radars. So it hides the engine fan blades, and that's critical to slashing the radar cross section. And that's what they've done really well with the F-35. If you look at head-on photos of the F-35, you can't see any of those fan blades. And there's technology out there that can just bounce off of the fan blades and actually tell you what kind of aircraft it is. So you definitely don't want that. Burying those engines in an S-shaped duct formation, that's kind of what the F-35 has as well. That fights the ability of massive amounts of airflow to get into those engines, and that's what's actually needed for thrust. That's a brutal balance that they have to strike. Northrop looks like they've cracked it after years of refinement, and here's why. Here's the number one reason, and here's kind of the pro tip if you are to go out and build your own stealth intakes one day. Auxiliary inlets, those are clutch. They pop open during high thrust maneuvers or low speed ops, so they can do it at both up at altitude, but definitely low speed. When this thing's coming into land, you don't have quite the airflow. Those auxiliary units are going to pop up and get that airflow that you need. The B-2 has those as well, but in the B-21 they made them look a little more sporty, not as big, not as weird as they did in the B-2. So the B-21 is an advancement in that way as well, in those auxiliary air inlets, and that ensures that the engines get enough air to avoid stalling out. Because when you're delivering a 20,000 plus weapons payload, you don't want to stall out over enemy territory. That's just bad form. That's actually a party foul. And then those cockpit windows, they're angular. They've got some sort of a razor thin look as far as the size of them, and they're designed to deflect radar waves, even if it means a narrower field of view. It's a calculated trade for staying invisible in contested skies. It's got an open architecture model that allows you to plug and play different suites. And when it comes to fighter jets and bombers, they do what's called suite updates. So you update to suite 5 or suite 6 or suite 6.2. So it allows you to really update the jet and the software continuously, I mean monthly if needed, for certain specific systems that you couldn't do in the past. So this setup means that it could seamlessly upgrade itself and outpace threats real time. So a new threat pops out of China, some sort of new S-400 or some big SAM system pops up with an update or an upgrade, and intelligence relays that to the bomber fleet. Now they can just push an upgrade to the B-21s right at push time when it's time to get those jets out the door. And now with 2 of them flying, you can really team these things up and see how they would work in unison to deliver those weapons. Or you could also focus one on aerodynamics and flight systems, while the other one is tuned in and dialed into that weapons delivery type systems. But having 2 of them, in my opinion, the biggest thing, guys, when it comes to fighter aviation and bomber aviation is having backups and having multiple members of your formation. So I believe that these things will operate in combat packs, so having 2 is just a huge game changer for the Raider. So now the Raider is not a solo artist anymore, so think the B-2s. Those things paired up when they shredded Iranian bunkers. They hit deep with overlapping strikes to make sure that they had a backup just in case one of the B-2s had to air abort or something else went wrong. You could strike those Iranian targets by having the B-2s paired up. It provides the Air Force with validation of that combat capability that they're likely going to use in their doctrine. So there's test pilots and engineers right now building some of the initial doctrine that will go into the combat capabilities of the B-21. Although right now they're likely more focused on the flying, handling characteristics, the actual working systems to get the bombs to release out of those systems, to make sure everything's set up correctly, to eject the weapons correctly and things like that. But they're also taking notes on the combat capability. Bigger than that is the maintainers. That's invaluable hands-on experience in managing multiple aircraft, maybe simultaneously launching these things, and it tests the effectiveness of the maintenance tools that they have, the technical data and the logistics processes that will support future operations of the B-21. This is a huge leap from one jet to now you got the double jets that now you can make sure that you can get two of them airborne at the same time. So the second B-21 really unlocks the Air Force's combat playbook. The radar operates in duos or small teams for maximum impact. In combat, one jet might jam enemy radars or launch decoys, while the other slips through to drop hypersonic or bunker buster weapons. This could mirror some of the B-2 operations. One radar could carry electronic warfare pods and cruise missiles to blind S-400s and take them out, while the other just hauls 30,000-pound massive ordnance penetrators, or an adaptation of that next generation penetrator, which is somewhere around 20,000 pounds, maybe even two of those, and that would prove the combat concept. So coordinating flight paths, sharing sensor data, and synchronizing the payloads. It's about overwhelming the enemy. Radars can't track what they can't see, and by the time they react, likely the strike's going to already be on its way from these B-21s. And then the open architecture software lets the pairs adapt mid-mission, swapping roles if some sort of threat emerges or a system is degraded. So this isn't just about firepower at this point, it's about advancing the anti-access and aerial denial, also called A2AD. You guys know I had to work in an acronym, but you were waiting all video for that, right? Now I want to talk about a few different combat operations where the B-21 could already be out there, silent and lethal. Let's talk about the first one in the South China Sea. Raiders ghost through the A2D2 nets, the aerial denial. One launches a hypersonic weapon with standoff capability to blind radars. Other B-21 could carry anti-carrier weapons and drop those with precision hits on China's carriers. No blip on any of China's radars, just CCTV, that camera footage at their bases showing explosions on their carriers and different strategic targets. But the second play, let's call this one an Arctic shadow play. That means Russian subs would be under the ice. Pairs of the B-21s would loiter above unseen. They'd be seeding buoys or potentially even dropping in torpedoes that could turn frozen seas into graves for those Russian submarines. And those Russian submarines would be teaming up with satellites and other Russian assets to try to detect those B-21s. But with the B-21's low radar signature, they're not going to really see anything. They're going to maybe see two blips of hummingbirds on their radar, and that's going to be an interesting point. Are there hummingbirds in the Arctic? I hope it's during the warm season. And then the third one we'll talk about would be a cyber and then kinetic strike combo. Think of drones syncing up with the B-21. So a drone swarm could help jam enemy grids of enemy air defenses, and then the B-21s could shred command and control hubs by launching their standoff weapons. They'd have a stealth entry into the airspace, and it would be a total blackout for an enemy radar. This is essentially Anchorman style escalation. It's essentially like the B-21s would be saying, I'm kind of a big deal, and everybody would agree at this point.
I'm kind of a big deal.
Really?
But when does this B-21 actually step into the light, or has it already? It looks like to me this thing isn't quite operational yet, but having two of them now this quickly after the first one just shows that it's being rushed into production. And the Air Force is targeting operational status by 2029. And especially with the operation that went down versus Iran, it's clear that the need for these B-21s is probably going to come sooner than we all think. And the hypersonic ability for these aircraft to carry hypersonics is probably some of the best deterrents you could ever think of. A stealth ghost jet going in your airspace that could then fire off hypersonic weapons. Yeah, we really want to play nice now is probably what some enemies out there are thinking. All right, so here's those images and here's my fighter pilot take. So starting off with that first one, you could see how beautifully seamless those intakes integrate into the forward part of the fuselage. What that means to me is an extreme amount of stealth, the ability of those things to operate without having any of the engine shown to the enemy, whether they're looking at it from above or below. And think space operations, you've got to be able to protect this thing from any space radars that could be up there. Let's say China has integrated some sort of radar into a satellite. You don't want that satellite to be able to detect and see this B-21. So you want to have those intakes just so flush into the fuselage that it doesn't even make sense. It kind of defies physics, and that's what it looks like to me. The way that this air flows into this jet is incredible, and that's why you need those auxiliary air inlets to make sure that you can get air into this jet without compressor stalling the engines. And here's that image of the front on view with the maintenance personnel around it. So that's probably the number one thing that stands out to me. The maintenance professionals getting the hands-on integration of two B-21s is a huge force multiplier. So they're getting that. And then look at the underneath side of this thing. Those 4 little slices into the skin. Those to me, I'm just guessing, those look like some sort of advanced sensor technology. Probably some sort of sensors that could literally create a 360-degree view of the battle space. So think the F-35's ability to look through the cockpit itself and just see everything going on around it. You'd probably want that in the B-21 as well. I mean, why not? It could seamlessly integrate with some sort of JHEMIC system and allow the pilots to just look around and see everything. And then you don't really care about the windows. The windows are just there as kind of a backup. And the fact that the windows are so small tells me that there's some sort of embedded integration into the B-21 that likely creates that 360-degree view of the battle space, just because I'm honing in on those 4 different slices and the different parts of the fuselage that it's on. Threat detection, looking out and connecting with CCAs, the ability of this jet to integrate seamlessly with other B-21s and other aircraft in the airspace is going to be second to none. And those to me look like some badass sensors that we probably won't get the actual scoop on exactly what they are. So you might just have to base that on my fighter pilot perspective and my unclassified opinion. And here's another shot of the B-21 coming in. Looks like it's got the air auxiliary doors up. Just a beautiful looking aircraft, nice and smooth, nothing on it, but it needs that Spartan painted on the wheel well. Can we get that Spartan? Can we get Leonidas or at least Jerome Butler's silhouette painted on this thing? I mean, a spear and 300, I think that needs to be the theme of the second one. I'm sure the B-21 project managers are watching my channel. So guys, please, 300, let's get this done. Let me know if I can help. And then here's some images of it in flight. Good view of the underneath side. And this has the air auxiliary doors out as well for maneuverability. You can just see how sleek this aircraft is, how seamlessly the air is flowing over top of it. To me, it just looks like an amazing stealth aircraft. That's just incredible to see. Super excited for this thing to hit the streets. This thing's a masterclass in stealth technology. It's built to be narrow and angular and deny any detection of it throughout the world. It's absolute genius in my opinion, hiding those fan blades from above and from below so that now your radar signature is completely concealed from the enemy, and now you've got the ability to use the thrust, the auxiliary air inlets, and do whatever you need to do at high speed, low speed, high altitude, low altitude, and keep those engines stable. Also, I've had some people ask about that trailing cone on the aircraft. So think of that trailing cone as a backup to the aircraft systems, and that's standard for early tests. This is a static pressure sensing cone that pulls clean air data that's away from the jet's wake, and then you can pair that with what the jet's actually showing the pilots in the cockpit, and you can validate how good the systems and the sensors are during all phases of flight. So that's a crucial part of testing for these B-21s, and likely all the B-21s will initially test with that at the beginning to make sure and validate that all the systems are functioning well. So here we are. We've got 2 Raiders now that are set up to own contested skies. This is testbed terror for the enemy, and if you can't tell, I'm a little bit fired up. I hope you guys are fired up as well. The only people probably not fired up would be Russia and China. Yeah, sorry guys, the B-21 fleet is multiplying. We're having B-21 Raider children all over the place. We're gonna have 100 of them, so keep your eyes to the sky for those things. Thanks for watching, guys. I really appreciate you being here. Let me know what you think of the B-21 program, what you think this new adaptation of having 2 of them will mean for the program and getting this thing out into combat. Would love to hear your thoughts. Put them in the comments below, and hey, the best compliment you can give me is just watch this video right here. When you watch this video right here, the algorithm loves it for some reason. It helps the channel grow like crazy, and I would greatly appreciate it. So I'll see you guys on this video right here. This is Ryan, also known as Max Afterburner, also known as a fighter pilot next door, signing off.